Today we're going to do the first of what will be a series of classes in which we, so to speak, look at the applications of the theoretical issues we were discussing last time about determinism. And what we'll do is look at first at a technology or a development, and second, ask the question of how it affected or was affected by or was incorporated in the social setting in which it appeared. And we'll start with the first information technology, which is to say systems of representation in general and writing systems in particular. Now, this is what will be by the end of the semester, a familiar timeline. And today we're going to cover basically about 35,000 years. So sit quietly, strap in your belts like Disneyland. If we continue at this rate, by the way, we can figure to finish the course somewhere around 8 minutes into the next session, so then we can all go home for the rest of the semester. We'll probably slow down. And what I want to do today is talk just a little bit about the beginnings of the notion of information as a historical notion. That's something we can talk about historically. Move on to talk about the emergence of systems of representation or material representation. Talk about the way in which those can be organized, the various kinds of signs and representational devices that are available. Look then particularly at the first and still probably the most important of all systems of representation, which is writing. Say something about the types of writing system, the independent inventions of writing system, something that will be clear when we get there, I hope. And then next time, go into these questions about what effects writing has in societies that devise it. Now, if you've been paying attention, as I know you all have, you will have noticed that we haven't actually defined information in the course of this, of these, and we have no intention of tipping our hand in that way. Why is that? Well, in the first place, to talk about the history of anything, information, slavery, the English language, whatever you like, implies a continuity over time of that thing, which is always a little problematic. If you look at, I was involved in the Norton Anthology of English Literature some years ago, writing the introduction. You have this problem that you write in the history of English literature. Was English literature in the 10th or 11th century something that we can speak of in the same terms as English literature now? Did it include, for instance, things written in French or even in Latin in England? Possibly. Does it include in the 20th century things written in the former British colonies or the British colonies? The notion of English literature itself changes over time. So does slavery. And so does information. So to define it is always to risk defining it in a way that reflects our contemporary preoccupations rather than the way this thing is understood historically. The second reason is that even if we just look at the way information is thought of now, there isn't a clear sense of what it is. In fact, there's a clearly ambiguous or fuzzy sense of what information is. And not all of the things that people describe as information are the sorts of things that can be said to have a history. So here's a passage from the introduction to an article in a special number of Business Week about 15 years ago now about information, the information revolution. And it begins, it's always there when we look for it, available wherever we bother to direct our attention. We can glean it from the pages of a book or the morning newspaper and from the glowing phosphors of a video screen. You can tell when this was written. Scientists find it stored in our genes and in the lush complexity of the rainforest. I guess the lush complexity, I don't know if that's an allusion to fractals or something of the structure, whatever. I can't tell from this. The Vatican Library has a bunch of it, and so does Madonna's latest CD. And it's always in the air where people come together, whether to wordplay or just gab. So this is what is it that's blah, 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 it's information. That's a standard. This is the kind of writing that comes with a system disk. Back when we had system disks. But obviously information is being used in a number of different ways here. It's always there where we look for it. Well, it's just something that's all around the place, not clear what that means. We can glean it from the pages of a book or the morning newspaper. Okay, there's print, there's information in print that we kind of understand. The glowing phosphors of a video screen, well, somehow I don't know what that means. It might be a word processor, it might be the hard drive, it's not clear what. But you say the stuff on a hard drive is information. It's stored in our genes. Well, that's another sense of information, another kind of information, the information that underlies DNA and biological information. The Vatican Library has a bunch of it. I put that in blue because that's pretty much the same thing as we get in our morning newspaper. And so is Madonna's latest CD. I don't know what, there's various kinds of information you can think of as appearing on Madonna's latest CD. It could be, just the bytes that tell you how the song is going to sound to produce the music, or it could be the information that the singer of the song believes herself to be a material girl. It could be any number of things. And it's always in the air where people come together to gab and so on. Well, that's about talking and so on. It's the information that's going on now in the room, that went on in the room before we started the class. These are all very different things. And not all of them are the sorts of things that can be said to have a history. So certain of them we can rule out. The information that's in our genes, to talk about the history of that kind, you could talk about the history of life or the history of the evolution of the genetic code, but that's really not what we're doing here, and that's not history in the more narrow sense of the term. That kind of information is the stuff. When you go to, of course, the history of information, you don't expect to start with the first primordial slime that worked itself into a proto-life. The stuff that people talk about, just the stuff that's in the air when we're chatting, that doesn't seem to be the kind of stuff that has a history either. We've been chatting for all of humanity, but it's not a history of chatter in that sense. That leaves us with a couple of things here. The stuff in the pages of a book, the stuff on a CD, the stuff on your hard drive or in a software program. Is there anything else here? The newspaper. What do those things have in common that these other kinds of information, the stuff in the rainforest and in our genes and the stuff that's just floating around when we're talking, don't have in common? Yeah, your name is? Jesse. A physical medium in the sense that it's materialized. There's a material representation of something. So we can talk, for instance, about a book being a material object, a CD being a material object. Maybe now, when we talk about things being realized on ships or so on and so forth, it's a little less material, but there's still that notion. There's some material representation of states of affairs, for want of a better word, that can be then transmitted, stored, manipulated, whatever. That's the kind of, the particular notion of information, it's not the only one, that is the one about which we can say that it has a history. And in fact, that's often the way people, when they talk about information, have nothing in mind but that. Almost 10 years ago now, the slide's a little, the names are left out here for some reason, but Peter Lyman and Hal Varian, at the time both colleagues of ours at the School of Information. Peter died sadly several years ago, and Hal is still associated with the school, just gone on to be the chief economist at Google, and assistant faculty at chair for us. We're very happy that we're sorry he left, but happy he didn't forget us. And they did a study that was enormously influential in answer to the question, how much information is there in the world? people wanted to know. And they tallied up how much information there was on paper, on film, on magnetic media, optical media, the books, so on and so forth. They took all those things and figured in bytes just how much stuff there was. And when it came out, it created a sensation. Nations were saying, well, how come we're behind these other nations? How do we up our byte content and so on? But the notion here is that information is the stuff that can be measured in bytes and that's stored somewhere. So if you and I have a conversation after class, that's not information by this. Obviously, it is, but it's not information by the standard. If you ask Blake, come up after Blake after class and ask him about the homework or something, that's not information. If you send him an email, all of a sudden that becomes information. A similar study was done about 3 years ago by a group down at San Diego, who asked the same question. They also asked questions about consumption. How much information does the average person consume, the average American consume in a year? How much information is consumed in a year? What do you think? Is that a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Isn't that like a study like that, like just writing down your bytes a little bit disingenuous, that text-based form says one character is essentially one byte, and that's a lot more information than something that's a film or audio recording.
Sure. That's one problem, and one reason that people did the idea being, look, Madonna CD has a lot more info. That CD in terms of bytes has a lot more information than War and Peace, or than the Encyclopedia Britannica perhaps even. But on an intuitive sense of information, hang on a second. So in fact, an exercise we give our graduate students is to go home and tell us how much information there is in your bedroom, and they come back confused and crazy a week later. Because it's very hard to do. So you might ask, how much information do we consume? How long does it take to consume the information? How many consumption hours of information do we do? There are a lot of ways to do this. San Diego group did that. And they also did. They asked how many bytes of information the average person consumes. By the way, what do you think is the medium of which the average American consumes the most bytes of information a year? Where are the most bytes? If you take all the bytes by consumption, where do you think they are? Anybody? TV, no. Internet. Your name is Sammy? Yeah. No, not internet. Other guesses? Yes. Phone is a good guess, but it's wrong. Your name is? Oh, yes. Other guesses? It's very reassuring that you're not guessing this. I'll tell you why in a second. Your name is? Sophia? Yes. Music's another very good guess. There's a lot of information consumed in that form. It's wrong. This is very reassuring about the modern generation. Your name is? Alex? Porn is a less reassuring answer, but it's happily wrong. And your name is? Jessica? Advertisements? These are all terrific guesses. Jessica, that's a terrific guess. Wrong. I got them. Your name is? Sandra? Books? That's too reassuring. That's sad. It's sad to say it's not even close. Books. No. Books. What are books? Radio's a good guess. Wrong. And your name is? Francine? Art's a good guess. Also wrong. Your name is? Simon. No. And your name is? Lisa? Television? Sure. We all watch huge amounts of television, right? Wrong. Your name is? Lauren? Word of mouth. There's a lot of that going on. We're not even counting that, right? Because that is material in form, so they don't even count that. That's a good guess. Your name is? Victoria? Snail mail. Boy, what century are you living in? You know? all I get is notices from people trying to sell me mortgages. But no, that's wrong. Yeah, your name is? Yoma? Movies? Yeah, a huge amount of information is consumed in that form, and that's a good guess. Wrong. So none of you in the last month have spent any time games. What's your name is? Peter. Yes, it's games. Look at that big orange thing. Video games. I mean, electronic games. Yeah. And why is that? Well, we're talking about bytes per person, right? Lots of people play them. They're very high bandwidth, right? There's a lot. To make those things work, you need a lot of. This is a little misleading in a way, but they're very high bandwidth. If you just look at the number of bytes that the average American consumes, video games, right? Let that be a lesson. But it's reassuring that none of you spent the last month. You've never even heard of World of Warcraft, and that's you've got much more serious things on your mind. I'm sure if I asked it across the bay of Stanford, they would come up with games right away. That's all they do. So, in any event, material representations of states of affairs, information in that sense. That's what we can talk about the history of. Where does it begin? Well, in a certain sense, I mean, if you want to think of speech as a material representation, which we're not, you could say it begins with human language. And of course, that is the most, if you think of it as an information system, by far the most important information system that's ever been devised. We can't really say much about the origin of human language. First of all, because as I say, we're going to look just at stuff that has material representations. And second of all, we really don't know a lot about it, about the origin of language. For many years, from the 18th century onward, people wrote these speculative essays, Humboldt and Rousseau and so on, all those speculative essays on the origins of language. Did it begin with warning noises, uh-oh, and beware, and so on. They begin with notions of affection, expressions of emotion, expressions of disgust, and people talked about it. Begin with the imitation of animal noises. So bow wow was the dog, and so on. And people had theories. There was the bow wow theory, and the poo poo theory, and the uh-oh theory, and so on and so forth. Rousseau himself thought it began twice. In the south, the southern countries like Italy, it began with the expression of emotion because they're Italians. In the north, it began with warnings and so on because of all these bears running around in the woods. And it worked better in French. In the south, the first sentence was "love me." In the north, "help me." Or in French, "aimez-moi" and "aidez-moi" were the two first sentences. They were a lovely essay, and I commend it. But who knows? In fact, why don't we know that? Well, when we're looking at some of the stuff that you were reading about in Marshak, the cave paintings and so on, we're trying to figure out. We can at least look at societies that are not identical, but hunter-gatherer societies that are with us now. How do they do these things? How do their rituals work, and so on, and try to make comparisons. We can't find any primitive languages. We can't find any languages that show any signs of having begun more recently than our language. You go anywhere in the world, to any language family, you will find languages of equal overall complexity. Some will have more complicated phonological systems. Some will have more complicated morphological systems with word formation. Some will have much more complicated syntax, and so on. But overall, they're all incredibly complicated. Yes, languages like English and German and so on have a lot more nouns, right? It's a more complicated society, more things to name, and so on. But that's not particularly interesting from the standpoint of linguistic structure. They're all equally complicated. So it isn't as if we can go and find a primitive language and look at that. Some people have actually tried to experiment with this. the pharaoh Psamtik I took two children, two babies, put them with a shepherd, and said, now don't talk to these children at all. I want to see what the first word they produce is, because that will be the word of the earliest language. They produced the word Bekos, which was a word of Phrygian, a language spoken in Anatolia and what's now Turkey. He said, oh, well, Phrygian must have been your first language, and they must be older than the Egyptians. James V of Scotland did the same thing with two children who he gave to a shepherd, said to have done this. And they produced the word Hebrew by the standard account. Not by modern standards, very good experimental procedure. People have looked to genetics. Perhaps you can see in the evolution of the genetic code some sign of the emergence of a language gene. And for a while, a couple of decades ago, they actually thought they found one with a FOXP2 gene, a gene that it turned out was defective in a family of, I think in London, somewhere in England, all had this defective gene and they couldn't speak, and they thought, oh, this is the language gene. It has some relation, it's a gene that's found in many, many species, and it has some relation to language in the sense that if you don't have it, you can't, intellectually they're fine, but they can't actually produce the motors, do the motor activity that it takes to speak. It's connected in some way, but it's not the language gene. So maybe language began a million and a half years ago, maybe it began 100,000 years ago, maybe it really didn't begin till the beginnings of tools and so on. There's speculation about this, we don't know. What we can talk about is the first representational artifacts, these material bearers of information. In 1940, just around the time that the Germans were occupying France, four boys in the southwest of France, high school kids, went out one afternoon to walk around in the forest. There was a legend in this area that there was a buried treasure somewhere in this forest, and they went looking for the treasure with their dog, Robot Hobo. And they're walking around. Hobo stuck his nose down a gully or something and started following his gully, and they started calling him back. And they came to the end of the gully, and there was an opening in the ground, and they went into it. It made a great Disney movie. I don't know why anyone's ever done it. They climbed down this opening into a cave. Very steep. They were scared they wouldn't be able to get back up. And in this cave, they saw this extraordinary chamber with all of these depictions of animals on the walls. And they were astonished. They went home. They came back the next day with ropes so they could go down further. Went down to another chamber, even more extraordinary. This is in Lascaux, the cave in Lascaux. And found these extraordinary representations. Thousands of pictures of deer and bisons and other animals on the walls of these caves. They came back out. They swore themselves. They swore the secret. They swore a pact of secrecy. It lasted a day and a half. And then they each brought some friends, charging them 40 centimes to see the cave, which somebody said was the first commercial exploitation of it. A long history of exploitation. Ultimately, their teacher found out, and somebody told the teacher. He got in touch with a student of Henri Breuil, who himself came. He was an abbé, a priest, who was one of the great authority scholars in Neolithic art or Neolithic artifacts. He came. He said it's the most extraordinary thing in the world. Said to one of the boys, Jacques Marsal, asked him to make sure nobody went in and took anything away or disrupted it. Marsal actually, with his parents' permission, camped out in front of the cave, and for the rest of his life, actually, was the first of the guides of the cave, and until he died, I think in 1989, it was quite late 1990, was involved in this project. Nobody quite knows what it was about, what they did there, why these representations. Some people say perhaps it was the rituals for hunting success that were performed. Nobody lived in this cave. There's no evidence anybody ever lived there. Perhaps it was a site of trance dancing, such as was practiced by the Lakota and other Plains Indians in the 19th century. Perhaps it was a means of instructing people in how to hunt, the methods of the hunt, like the first instructional video was on the walls of the cave. Nobody quite knows, and even to call them informational representations is to assume that they were there to inform or to, rather than just to evoke some supernatural force. We don't know. What we do know is that there were two kinds of representations from this period. Is what Marshak talks about. On the one hand, there were these images and symbols, like that horse, like these pictures and so on, that were somehow obviously involved in cultural processes, rites, religious ceremonies, myths, stories, that kind of cultural activity. There were also these very different artifacts, notched bones, stones with little markings on them, that were means of presumably recording the passage of time, the passage of something, the season, presumably time, days, objects. These reflect two of the three basic ways of signaling something, of creating a sign. Charles Peirce, the American pragmatist philosopher, to him we owe this three-way distinction among kinds of signs: icon, index, and symbol. What's an icon? Well, icon is basically a sign that refers in virtue of its resemblance, greater or lesser resemblance to the thing it's signifying. The sign with a curve on it, the road sign with a curve on it, presumably you know what the relation is because that curve resembles in some fashion what's going to be coming up on the highway. You have to know a lot about signs and how they work, but knowing that, if it goes the way that one does, you know, there's a right turn and then a left turn, and if it's reversed, you know, it goes the other way. So there is that parallel between the structure of the sign and what the symbol and what's signified. An index is a sign that stands in a causal relationship, let's say, or a spatial relationship to the thing you're signifying. When I go through the forest blazing a trail, you know, the expression to blaze a trail, literally a blaze is to paint something or carve something on the side of a tree. What does that blaze say? Well, it says that I've been there. Somebody's been there and made the mark. When the I don't know, people still have flags on mailboxes. The postman comes in, lifts the flag on the mailbox. That means the postman's been there, right? It's an index of his having passed, and so it's a sign that's caused by his presence. The mercury in the thermometer, if they still use mercury in thermometers, rises according to the temperature. And again, there's a causal relationship between the change in temperature and the change in the height of the mercury. Finally, there are symbols where there's a perfectly arbitrary relationship between the sign and the thing signified. When I say the word cat, you know, I could say cat, I could say gato, I could say lots of things, but there's no relationship between that set of sounds, and the thing I'm signifying. A green light means go, a red light means stop. That's the arbitrary convention for doing those things. So they're perfectly arbitrary. So let me mention, say a little bit about each of these. As I said, an icon is a sign that stands in relation to resemblance or similarity to the thing that's signified. And there are lots of ways. It could be the printer icon there, which sort of looks like a printer. The figure of a man, obviously a highly conventionalized figure of a man. How we wear trousers, men wear trousers, women wear skirts. Remember that. That's the only place where that convention still survives. And it's not that there's a man here. It means this is the room for men. The curves ahead sign, as I mentioned. That other sign that I took a picture of once. I don't know what it means. You know, when you're swimming here, watch out for cars falling on your head. You know, these signs do involve a considerable amount of contextual information to interpret, but there is always that